Nokia was a brand that was probably most famous for their cameras on their smartphones. However, since the band's resurrection under the new ownership, it's not had too many raving reviews about the same. But they do seem to be working harder with each generation, and the latest Nokia 7 Plus seems promising, at least on paper. This is Sandeep from RevAtlas. Let's flex the camera muscles on this thing. The rear camera unit comprises of two cameras. The primary is a 12 megapixel sensor with f1.75 aperture and 1.4 micron pixel size. The second is also a 12 megapixel 1 micron pixel size sensor, but that is mated to a telephoto lens that offers 2x optical zoom and a smaller f2.6 aperture. Despite the claim aperture value of 1.75, the EXIF information shows f1.8, and in reality the difference you would get from an f1.75 lens and f1.8 lens, especially on a sensor this size, is negligible. So it's practically the same as an f1.8 for all intents and purposes. Image quality is very good and there's plenty of detail and sharpness to work with. Images are clean and exhibit good colors as well, although there is a slight tendency to have a yellowish white balance. The dynamic range isn't that great, however, and is limited, so you'll need to resort to HDR. The HDR mode is pretty good and does help improve the dynamic range quite a bit, especially in bumping up the shadows, but it still doesn't get back too much detail from the highlights. But still, if you're faced with a tricky lighting condition, the HDR mode could very well save your day, albeit at the expense of a bit more noise. These low light indoor samples showcase just that. There's more information in the images and you get a more balanced image in terms of exposure, but the noise is definitely more. Low light performance is pretty good with the noise levels also being kept fairly in check, especially thanks to the large pixel size. There's good processing coming into play considering that this photo was taken at ISO 1600 and a shutter speed of 1/14th of a second, but yet the noise isn't too high. If you want to keep noise levels even more in check, it's probably best to use the Pro mode and manually set the ISO. The Pro mode supports a maximum ISO of 3200 and a maximum shutter speed of 4 seconds. The second telephoto lens is good at enabling you to get closer to the action without having to step away from your vantage point. While the quality is good in well-lit situations, it doesn't do very well in low light and also misfocuses at times. The portrait mode is called Live Bokeh on the 7 Plus and it makes use of the telephoto camera for the same. You can adjust the strength of the blur to be applied and by default is set to around 40 to 50%, which we feel is the sweet spot. The main issue I had with this, apart from not working in dark situations, is the minimum focusing distance. It seemed to struggle to get the focus right in many situations and the distance required was in most cases 90 centimeters at least. Finally, even when it was able to focus at 2x mode, the live bokeh mode requires even more distance to get the focus right. Even at times when it did give the depth success confirmation, it wasn't in focus. However, when it does work, the effect is pretty nice, and although it doesn't get the edge detection 100% right, it's one of the better ones in this segment. Simpler objects are handled well, but with intricate patterns and objects, it does get some edges wrong. But overall, the bokeh quality is very good and the blur looks pleasing in most instances, with the issues only popping up if you pixel peep. The front-facing camera is a 16 megapixel sensor with f2 aperture, which captures a lot of detail, and although there is no autofocus, everything is pretty clear once you have the distance right. The dynamic range is pretty good and HDR mode helps it a bit further. Low light performance is decent too, but noise does creep in. Funnily enough, you can't adjust the level of blur on the front-facing camera portrait mode, which is called bokeh mode instead of live bokeh mode, but the blurring is very good. It has the right balance between blur levels and sharpness and retains a lot of the detail that the camera can capture without bokeh. Many other smartphones in this segment tend to drown out the details and sharpness when you take a portrait mode shot, but this doesn't do that. It does, however, have a tendency to miss blurring portions around the ear when there's a busy background or else blur portions of the ear itself. The portrait mode works well even under low light. Video recording is supported at a maximum of 4K 30fps by the rear camera. The details are plenty and sharpness is on point, and resulting videos have a bitrate of around 40 megabits per second. However, 4K videos lack EIS and can be a bit jerky. If you want properly stabilized footage, then you have to record in 1080p, which features EIS. The footage loses out quite a bit in terms of detail, and the bitrate effectively drops by half as well, but the footage is very stable. The front-facing camera too can record 1080p videos with EIS, and both the cameras also come with Nokia Ozo audio that allows you to choose between the front audio, rear audio or surround audio. Videos can be recorded with the telephoto camera in 2x zoom, and you can zoom in or out while recording also, but again the quality does drop further when you use the telephoto lens, so we don't recommend it unless you have no way to get closer to the subject. So this is the video from the front-facing camera on the Nokia 7 Plus. Let me know what you guys think about the overall dynamic range, the image quality, the sharpness, detailing, as well as how well it's picking up my voice also in this busy environment. So now the audio is being picked up from the rear on the smartphone. You can also shift it to the front right now, and I can even change it to surround during this entire process. So that's a pretty neat, interesting trick that you can do even while recording, and it could help several people capture the ideal audio or the acoustics that they want while they're actually talking. So it's as easy as going into settings and changing it right then and there. Nokia is still highlighting the both feature or dual capture, which records videos or captures photos with both the front and rear cameras in the same frame. It now additionally supports a picture-in-picture mode too, in case you want to give more emphasis to one particular camera stream. You can easily adjust which camera needs to be given priority, as well as the position of the second camera stream, and even hot swap the cameras when recording. There's also this neat picture-in-picture mode, and what's good about this is that you can actually have a smaller screen sort of in the entire thing rather than having two of the equal amount from the front and rear camera. And this also allows you to switch between the two cameras, so I can come back to the main camera whenever I want. I can come back to the front camera whenever I want, and the other one gets sort of sidelined. It's still there, it's still streaming, it's still capturing stuff, but it doesn't become the center of attention unless you really want it to. So this is something that I think many vloggers or YouTubers or anyone who's even reviewing gadgets will find pretty interesting, considering that you can capture yourself as well as the device you're talking in a single frame. The Nokia 7 Plus is a pretty great all-rounder camera phone. It does have a few flaws, particularly with the focus issues itself in the portrait mode, and the blurring algorithm is also not the best around. I also had an issue with the app hanging for a few seconds, especially when using the HDR mode. This is in spite of it being on the latest software. I'm not sure if this is a one-off thing, but hopefully this is an isolated issue and one that will be rectified even on our unit with an update. But it still is one of the more capable smartphones out there when it comes to the camera, and we shall also be comparing it soon to the Redmi Note 5 Pro. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next one.